We all love to talk about the WWE style, and it definitely exists. We've seen plenty of outside talent come in and switch things up to appease the promotion, and it's always a curious decision. If somebody has smashed it on the indie scene and you hire them for that reason, why chop off their wings? They will fall and die like a forgotten bird. It's not like this is what happens all the time, though. If it was, WWE would be really dull, and every now and then the gloves come off and everything goes crazy. Usually gets everybody talking as well, which has to be the idea, and means we can look back with confused eyes in lists like this. I'm Simon from What Culture. Remember to smash that subscribe button. This is the 10 most berserk WWE matches ever. Number 10, the 41-man Battle Royal. Happening on the 14th of October 2011 on an episode of SmackDown, this was literally done just so WWE could outdo themselves by upping the 40-man Battle Royal that had happened earlier that year. This just had one extra person. That is ridiculous. It was also stupid to watch because you couldn't make heads or tails out of any of it. Trying to pick a wrestler was impossible, as commentator Josh Matthews discovered by getting everybody wrong, and that madness was only added to as Michael Cole was healing it up, and Booker T was just Booker T. This really is an assault on the senses, or in Dolph Ziggler's, an attack on his head after Primo crushed his skull and almost left him concussed. We were told over and over it was the largest battle royal in history, which definitely wasn't annoying, although we did see Drew McIntyre do some kind of cartwheel. That was new. Randy Orton was eventually victorious, and if you want to exhaust your brain, go and watch this. It is absolutely crazy. Number 9, Kurt Angle versus Shane McMahon. Given this happened at King of the Ring 2001, it's important to note that Shane McMahon wasn't the Shane McMahon we know today. He'd only had a few matches by this point, and while a lot of them had included death-defying stunts, his clash with Kurt Angle was utterly different. An absolute war, which is still difficult to watch in 2019. It actually starts with some smart storytelling, as McMahon made you believe he may be able to outdo the Olympic gold medalist by tricking him. He played possum and lie in wait before surprising him with the old roll-up. None of that matters now, though, as there is only one thing we remember, which is when the pair got to the entranceway. The idea was Angle would suplex Shane through some worked glass, although clearly somebody forgot to gimmick it. It meant McMahon smashed his skull right into a hardened wall and then crashed down onto his neck. The two decided they had to make this work regardless, leaving Kurt to try over and over again until, yes, he just hurled Shane through some legitimate glass. He also did the same thing coming the other way. It left them both bloodied and battered, and it's so incredible brutal you may not believe it. It exists in infamy now, and it's bonkers. Number 8, the Radicals and DX versus the Rock and Sock Connection and Too Cool. What a bizarre combo, eh? Eddie Guerrero may have been injured with X-Pac taking his place, and Brian Christopher may have been marking out like a deranged fan on the outside, but this was the Attitude Era in all its glory, as strange characters and gimmicks all got into the action. I mean, the first thing we saw was The Rock giving Triple H a spine buster on the ramp. Talk about throwing the usual escalation of wrestling right out the window. It was this nuts constantly as well, with no sense of what a match should be, and one particular sequence with the Great One was like a video game. He just waltzed through all his opponents and punched every one of them in the face as they pinged around as if they were flying off the screen. The game would stop him from taking the win, but no one was watching this for a sporting contest. It was pantomime at its finest, as brawling in crazy spots reigned supreme. And if you only know modern day wrestling and then you go back and watch this, your eyes will probably fall out of your head because none of it makes any sense. Number 7, the Money in the Bank ladder match. In this instance, we are referring to the World Heavyweight title version that went down at the pay-per-view of the same name in 2012. And even the list of participants is odd. Rey Mysterio, Tensai, Santino Marella, Damian Sandow, Tyson Kidd, Sin Cara, and Dolph Ziggler. It was like somebody had looked backstage and seen a random group having dinner and thought they should be thrown into a match together. Obviously, we had the usual unbelievable bumps which made you cringe and yet somehow give you an adrenaline rush, but that was balanced out with comedy from the likes of Santino. It was the oddest mix, especially because it was a rare occasion where Dolph Ziggler was allowed to get a victory. 2012 was a different time. It did its job though, as despite the multitude of Money in the Bank matches we've had, this one stands out, even if it's simply because it's so different. You still get your brutality too, as poor Tensai's powerbomb through a ladder so hard, it'll make your own bones shatter. My word. Why did we ever come up with this idea, especially because Ziggler also has his neck thrown into a chair? Who really needs working joints? Number 6, Edge, Lita and Mick Foley versus Tommy Dreamer, Balua and Terry Funk. Going down at ECW One Night Stand in 2006, this was always going to be crazy just because where it was happening and who was in it. In what world are Terry Funk and Mick Foley not going to go all out when an ECW audience is watching on? Doesn't exist. The fact this had intergender violence in it to boot was just more evidence that WWE wasn't in Kansas anymore, Toto. Amazingly, it started off with wrestling as Dreamer and Edge traded headlocks, but this was clearly a ride nod to what was next. Funk and Foley soon took over, and that was when things picked up. Whatever could be used as a weapon was, and the two just smacked the crap out of each other, hoping to get a bigger reaction every time. Worked. As if this wasn't enough, barbed wire and a lot of blood was introduced before Terry lit Mick on fire with a flaming stick and then threw him through a table that was also wrapped in more barbed wire. Dreamer was also choking out Edge with yet more of the spiky stuff, and I know you've already stopped watching this list to put this on the network. It is absolutely unreal, and everybody involved is from another planet. Number 5, the Hart Foundation versus Steve Austin, Ken Shamrock, Goldust, and the Legion of Doom. Canadian Stampede is arguably the best in-your-house event WWE ever put on. A lightning crowd made it feel like WrestleMania, and Bret Hart's group was so beloved that even if you hated the stable, you couldn't help but be impressed by the noise. Canada was behind them regardless, to the point I think they could have stolen everybody's wallets, and fans would have felt privileged that they were robbed by their heroes. As opposed to pretend this was a bizarre reaction though, WWE actually embraced it and built the match around the noise. Lo and behold, it worked wonders. It was far more intense and fast-paced than your average WWE bout in 1997, and when the Hitman stopped away on Austin in the corner, the hard camera actually shook because of how loud it was. These were the days. The narrative focused around Owen Hart, but it was Stone Cold who stole the show, as it was more proof following WrestleMania 13 that we had a main eventer on our hands. He reveled in the reaction and played off it wonderfully, and by the time Jim Ross screamed, "You've got to be here to feel this," it was hard to say otherwise. The atmosphere was pouring through your TV, so imagine what it was like if you were there. Moment for the ages. It's not likely that we'll get anything like this again given how much wrestling has changed over the last 20 years, but still, we'll always have this, and it's oh so special. And of course, bonkers. Number 4, Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman versus Samoa Joe versus Roman Reigns. The SummerSlam 2017 main event needed something special as the Roman Reigns effect was still struggling to get going, and WWE answered that by taking 4 of its biggest stars and just throwing them into the same match. It was an all-out battle as soon as the bell rung, and the inevitable Strowman-Lesnar stare down elicited the response it was designed to. The fact the monster then went on to hurl the beast around like he was ice cream just enhanced that further, because nobody had seen Lesnar treated like that maybe ever. It was role reversal. Outside of this, Joe was the opportunist biding his time, whereas Roman was there to have the crap kicked out of him. No matter what momentum he got, it didn't take long before somebody was slamming him back down to the mat. He was a whipping boy. The real joy with this though was WWE's camera work, which often comes in for criticism. They framed every surprise attack perfectly, meaning if you were watching on television you oohed and ahed when somebody came out of nowhere to break up a pinfall because you never saw it coming. In many ways it wore you out. It was also layered with subplots, never let up, and was definitely one of WWE's best matches of the year. All this too, when beforehand, everybody said it would suck. Number 3, the six-pack challenge. There's so many talking points from the Attitude Era, a lot gets lost, and this is definitely one of them. Headlining Unforgiven 1999, it saw The Rock, Triple H, The Big Show, Mankind, Kane, and the British Bulldog of all people clash for the vacant WWE title as Steve Austin served as the special guest enforcer. I think that sums it up. No spot outstayed its welcome as we jump from 2 wrestlers to 2 wrestlers to 2 wrestlers, before it fell apart and everyone just brawled throughout the arena. We even saw The Rock run the entirety of the ramp to give Triple H a clothesline. It was utterly stupid, but that's what this period was all about. How dumb can we be, and yet still somehow get away with it? The game had a target on his back as Mankind also drove his head into the ring steps. And if you ever wanted a match that instantly brings you back to the 90s, this is likely it. Just 20 minutes of stupidness. Trips would eventually get his revenge to become the new champ, but he certainly didn't look like it afterwards. I often wonder what would happen if we booked matches like this today, because you have to figure an audience would still be into it. was like taking the syringe worth of drugs and injecting it into everybody's face. Number 2, the 6-man Hell in a Cell. Following on from that, we get to Armageddon 2000, which was equally dumb but also fun. WWE just didn't care about the sports side of wrestling during this time, would do whatever they could to get a reaction. Once again, the world title was on the line, but here we had put our contestants in a Hell in a Cell and told them to try and kill each other. In fact, this was Kurt Angle versus Triple H versus The Rock versus Steve Austin versus The Undertaker versus Rikishi, who had done it for The Rock. It was always going to go a bit nuts, and they did try to end each other's careers. The amount of blood, if nothing else, was a serious calling card. It really was like a match that somebody had created on a video game too, because there was no structure. Everyone just took their moment to shine before being run over by a rival. We also had that memorable moment too, when the Dead Man and Big Quiche were atop of the cell and Taker just pushed him off. I mean, a giant truck that had hay in the back had been driven to ringside to protect his fall, which is ludicrous, but even then this must have been terrifying. Rikishi took a long fall and he's facing the wrong way. That takes some doing. It ended with every finishing move in the history of wrestling, and even Vince McMahon was meddling at some points. Somehow Angle walked in and out the champion, but this was so crazy it only helped his character. He had survived a war. Number 1, TLC 2. This match is so otherworldly, even Edge, who was in the thing, has said that if he could go back in time, he likely would have done things differently. It did get everybody in the bout over, but at what cost? Where the Rated R superstar was concerned, it likely contributed to his early retirement. It did serve as a true coming out party for Edge and partner Christian, the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys, and yeah, it was just a giant spot fest. The thing is, back in 2001 at WrestleMania 17, that wasn't really what WWE did, so to get it on such a big stage was almost unbelievable. Also, who cares? This was an absolute spectacle and as amazing right now as it was almost 20 years ago. It's a timeless classic and probably always will be. All 6 guys changed the game. It'll forever be that Jeff Hardy Edge spear that steals the headlines, and you can see why. The impact of both of them is like a car wreck, and I don't get how they turned up on Raw 24 hours later. I'd be crying on the phone to my mum. Any criticism that no one actually looked like they were trying to win was also negated, given Lita, Spike, Dudley and Rhino all intervened to try and help their team have their hands raised. And the conclusion to all of this is that if you do put 6 wrestlers in the ring, you never know what is going to happen. Know of any other Berserk WWE matches? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Then head over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture, and I will talk to you again soon.